Hey everybody, welcome back to Client Stories with DNAngels. My name is David Vargas, and today I want to talk to you about Tom. Tom came to us not knowing who his father was and with very few clues from his mother. She had a couple of possible names and where they worked, but not much besides that. But Mike had tested with Ancestry DNA and had a lot of high matches, so he started to work on his case. Now, the first thing we do in any case that we work is to start by sorting and grouping the DNA matches that somebody has. And ideally, we want to find 4 distinct groups that that person is associated with, because usually that would tell us who the grandparents are, and then we can sort of work back from there, find great grandparents, and sort of branch out and find those particular DNA matches. But in his case, we were only seeing 3 groups. Very confusing why there were only 3 groups. We broke it apart again. We started all over. Again, there were 3 groups. Tried a third time, starting at even lower matches, but only 3 groups. Thankfully, Tom has a maternal half-brother, Tim, who also tested on Ancestry. And so we were able to make sure that 2 of those groups were on that maternal side, and to really be able to say, okay, that third group is clearly paternal. And so we were able to focus our attentions into that larger group and figure out where things might sort of match up and meet up and all of those things. Probably the reason we only had the 3 groups is because that fourth is probably a low testing group, and they just don't have a lot of people out there who've taken DNA tests for us to try and work with. But still, there were over or nearly 100 matches in that paternal group, and a lot of them were between 90 and 400 centimorgans, which is actually really great for us to be able to look at that second cousin range and try to group together parents, grandparents, and all of those things. So we started working on mapping these DNA matches into his family tree, making connections between the different folks and putting them alongside each other. But one of the other things that we instruct clients to do as we start on their case is to download their raw DNA from Ancestry and to upload that to the other free databases across the internet. Those are GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, and MyHeritage. And thankfully, when Tom did that, he had a very high match at MyHeritage of 375.8 centimorgans. They were estimating it was probably a first cousin once removed, meaning that Tom's father and this particular person were probably first cousins. So that person was actually very responsive to us when we were reaching out to them. Tom actually had quite a number of matches who were very helpful as far as being in contact with him, trying to help give clues, but nobody really had the answer for him of how they matched to him and who that key family member that may have been his father was. But regardless, we were able to kind of piece together a family tree, start building things out, and we were seeing a lot of names sort of popping up in commonality. And one of those was Gomez, which was a name that Mom had mentioned to the client before we got started. So we focused our attention on that Gomez family and trying to piece together what those all looked like and everything like that. One of the interesting pieces is that in that first cousin once removes case, he had a pretty extensive tree and had quite a number of Gomez family members that sort of worked downwards. And behind the scenes, we built that family trees and located one of his sisters named Mary Gomez, who actually lives in Las Vegas. We were able to find some contact information for her, Facebook page, all sorts of other information, and we put Tim in contact with her. And again, she was very helpful and actually confirmed that Juan Gomez, one of the names that was given by Mom, actually was her brother. And so she also confirmed that her brother was in one of the professions that Mom had mentioned previously. So there's a couple of key pieces of information that are sort of helping push us in the direction that maybe we're in the right place within that family tree. She actually provided some additional contact information for her brother and her nephew and a few other folks that Tom was able to reach out to and make a connection with. But there was one problem in the fact that Tom only speaks English, and most of these family members live in Mexico and only speak Spanish. So he had to employ the help of a translator to be able to translate information. While I was able to do a little bit with him, he needed much more real-time communication because he was dialoguing with these folks on Facebook. A little pro tip here, Google Translate is fantastic at this, but sometimes you do need somebody who sort of understands the slang and what things may mean outside of what is actually being stated, because there's a lot that can come into that. So it just so happened that Tom has a friend who speaks Spanish and was able to translate for him on the fly. So that came in very helpful because they weren't waiting for me to be the go-between, and they were able to communicate in real time. So through all of that, Tom got in touch with Juan, who he presumed was his father, and they started dialoguing back and forth. Juan actually did confirm and acknowledge that he knew Mom back at around the time that Tom was conceived, and so there was a pretty good understanding that that was probably the case, but we still didn't have proof. And because Dad lives in Mexico, DNA testing still isn't quite as easy to do there as it is here in the United States. So we actually had information for Juan's son, who happens to be Junior, who does live in the United States. And so he agreed to do a DNA test and completed that on MyHeritage. We waited for weeks, probably 3, 4, 5 weeks to actually get that result back. When it finally did arrive, the results showed that Tom and he share 1,552.7 centimorgans, meaning they are half brothers. So that proved the case. We had figured out who Dad was. We knew who his half brother was. We also had aunts and uncles and all sorts of family. He went from having himself, his half-brother, and his mother to having this Mexican huge family, which was a phrase that came out in this whole thing that made me chuckle because I completely understand what that means. So it was a great adventure for him. He's been in contact with his biological father, with his aunts, uncles, all sorts of folks who have been able to kind of get him some additional information about his family. Thank you for watching this episode of Client Stories with DNAngels. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. If you or someone you love is searching for a biological parent, grandparent, or trying to break down a brick wall in your family tree, visit us at DNAngels.org. We're here to help you find answers. Parent searches are always free, donations are appreciated, and other services may come with a fee. Visit our website to learn more.